camera. Why are you towing my car? I was inside for 10 minutes
This
just
is a no
grabbing
parking
groceries.
zone. The sign is right there.
This
Your
is
car has to be
ridiculous.
relocated.
There's nowhere else to park. I was coming.
October 15th, 2019, Riverside, Illinois. Helen Crawford had been watching the black man load equipment into his Camry for 3 minutes. Something felt wrong. Something felt familiar. She pulled out her phone, hit record, started screaming. Thief! Someone call the police. He's stealing from the neighbors. The man turned around. His hand moved to his waist with muscle memory that comes from 20 years on the force. The camera caught it all. What Helen Crawford's livestream captured that Tuesday afternoon wasn't just another Karen moment. It was the face of the man who watched her husband die, the detective who lied in his report, the partner who walked away while Tony Reeves bled out in an alley on Chicago's South Side. For 15 years, Marcus Williams thought he was safe. For 15 years, Helen Crawford had been waiting. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Williams felt the familiar weight of his Glock 19 against his hip as Helen Crawford's shrill voice cut through the suburban afternoon quiet. 15 years of private security work hadn't dulled the instincts that kept him alive through 2 decades of Chicago PD patrol. His hand had moved to his weapon before his brain caught up, pure muscle memory from streets where hesitation meant death. But this wasn't the South Side. This was Riverside, Illinois, where the biggest crime was stolen Amazon packages and teenagers smoking weed behind the community center, where he'd moved specifically to escape the ghost that haunted every corner of Chicago. Ma'am, there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus kept his voice level, his hands now visible and away from his waist. The woman's phone was still recording, her face flushed with righteous anger. Something flickered in her eyes as she studied his features, recognition trying to surface through years of suppressed memory. Helen Crawford. He'd seen her at the grocery store, the post office, always watching everyone with suspicious eyes. The neighborhood busybody who called the homeowners association about grass height violations and unleashed dogs. But the way she was staring at him now went deeper than casual racism or paranoid vigilance. I live here, Marcus continued, nodding toward the modest 2-story colonial behind him. Unit 47B. I'm loading equipment for a job. He gestured to the security cameras, motion detectors, and installation tools visible in his trunk. Williams Security Solutions. I can show you my business license. The live stream comments were already flooding in. Marcus could see the notification numbers climbing on her screen. Hundreds of viewers watching another Karen confronts black man video unfold in real time. But Helen wasn't performing for the camera anymore. She was studying his face with the intensity of someone solving a 15-year-old puzzle. You're him, she whispered, so quietly the phone's microphone almost missed it. Jesus Christ, you're actually him. Marcus felt ice water replace the blood in his veins. The October afternoon suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Chicago PD. Badge number 2847. Detective Marcus Williams, South District. Her voice gained strength with each detail. Partner to Officer Anthony James Reeves. Ring any bells, detective? The title hit him like a physical blow. Nobody in Riverside knew about his law enforcement background. He'd buried it deeper than Jimmy Hoffa when he'd moved here with his daughter Jasmine, started the security business, joined the PTA, coached Little League, built a life where the past couldn't find him. But the past had just called him by name. I think you have me confused with someone else, Marcus said, though they both knew it was a lie. Helen's eyes had the fervor of a true believer who'd finally found her holy grail. Behind those eyes, he could see the gears turning, memories clicking into place. October 23, 2004, Helen continued, stepping closer. Alley behind Morrison's liquor store. 2 officers responded to a domestic disturbance call. Only one walked out. Her phone trembled in her grip, but she kept recording. My husband died that night, and you were supposed to have his back. The neighborhood sounds, lawnmowers, children playing, traffic on Harlem Avenue, faded into white noise. Marcus was back in that alley, smelling garbage and gun smoke, watching Tony Reeves clutch his chest while blood seeped between his fingers, hearing the whispered confession about the protection money, the names of dirty cops reaching all the way to the captain's office. The truth that would have destroyed half the precinct and ended Marcus's career before it really began. The report said it was gang members. Helen pressed on. Drive-by shooting, random violence. But the angles were wrong, weren't they, Marcus? The bullets came from close range. Someone Tony trusted, someone who could get within 10 feet without raising suspicion. Your husband died a hero, Marcus said automatically. The same lie he'd told Internal Affairs, the grieving widow, the newspapers. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not who you think I am. Helen laughed, a sound devoid of humor. 15 years I've been looking for you. 15 years wondering why the star witness to my husband's murder suddenly transferred to narcotics, then took early retirement, then disappeared completely. She held up her phone. But the internet never forgets, detective. Amazing what facial recognition software can do these days. Marcus glanced at his watch. 3:47 p.m. Jasmine would be home from school in 20 minutes. His daughter, who thought her father was a simple security installer, not a man haunted by lies and covered-up murders, who believed her dad was a hero, not a coward who chose career over conscience. Turn off the camera, Marcus said quietly. Not a chance. Helen's smile was razor-sharp. This is just getting interesting. The front door of his house opened. Jasmine Williams stepped onto the porch, backpack slung over her shoulder, earbuds around her neck. 17 years old, honor roll student, planning to study criminal justice at Northwestern. His pride and joy, and his greatest fear, that she'd discover who her father really was. Dad? Jasmine called out, sensing tension in the air. Everything okay? Marcus looked at Helen Crawford's phone, still recording, at his daughter's innocent face, at the peaceful suburban street that was about to become ground zero for a war 15 years in the making. Everything was definitely not okay. Marcus's world narrowed to the space between his daughter's trusting voice and Helen Crawford's predatory smile. The autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves from somewhere down the block, mixing with the metallic taste of fear coating his tongue. 17 years of fatherhood had taught him to read every micro-expression on Jasmine's face, and right now he could see confusion creeping into her dark eyes as she processed the tableau before her. Just a misunderstanding, baby girl, Marcus called back, forcing his voice into the calm, measured tone he'd perfected during bedtime stories and homework help. Be inside in a minute. But Jasmine didn't move. She inherited her mother's intuition along with her stubborn streak, qualities that made her an exceptional student and a terrible liar detector. Her gaze moved from her father to Helen, to the phone still recording between them, cataloging details with the sharp intelligence that had earned her early acceptance to Northwestern's criminology program. You sure? Jasmine stepped down from the porch, her movements fluid and confident. Marcus's heart clenched as he recognized his own walk in her stride, the unconscious cop gait he'd never quite shaken, now passed down to his daughter, who wanted to follow in footsteps she didn't fully understand. Helen's eyes lit up with fresh malice. Actually, young lady, you might want to hear this. It's about your father's real profession. Ma'am. Marcus's voice dropped to the register that had once made seasoned criminals reconsider their life choices. My daughter has nothing to do with whatever grievance you think you have. Grievance? Helen laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. My husband was murdered, detective. And your father, she pointed dramatically at Marcus, knows exactly who killed him. Jasmine froze mid-step. Marcus watched 15 years of careful construction crumble in real time. The bedtime stories about mommy being a teacher and daddy installing security systems. The explanation for why they'd moved to Riverside when she was 2, leaving behind all family and friends in Chicago. The reason he sometimes woke up screaming, claiming it was just work stress from difficult installations. Dad? Jasmine's voice carried the weight of every unasked question, every half-truth she'd accepted without challenge. What is she talking about? Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text notification, then another and another. The viral video was already spreading, carrying their real names and faces across social media platforms where digital vigilantes lived for moments exactly like this. Helen noticed his expression change as he glanced at the screen. 20,000 views and climbing, she said with satisfaction. Hashtag Justice for Tony is already trending in Chicago. Marcus closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, feeling the weight of 15 years of careful planning dissolving like sugar in rain. When he opened them, Jasmine was standing beside him, her backpack dropped on the sidewalk, her face set in the determined expression she wore when solving calculus problems or defending unpopular positions in debate class. Whatever this is about, Jasmine said firmly, My father is a good man. He's never hurt anyone in his life. The irony cut deep. Marcus had built his daughter's entire worldview around the fiction of his own goodness. Every soccer game he'd coached, every school fundraiser he'd organized, every quiet act of service in their small community, all designed to convince himself as much as her that he could still be the man she deserved as a father. Helen's expression softened slightly as she looked at Jasmine, and for a moment Marcus saw past the anger to the grief underneath. How old were you when you moved here, sweetheart? 2, Jasmine answered automatically, then shot a questioning glance at her father. Same age as my daughter was when she lost her daddy, Helen said quietly. Same age when I had to explain why daddy wasn't coming home from work anymore. The parallel hung in the air like smoke. Marcus could see Jasmine processing it, her analytical mind working through implications and connections. She was too smart to miss the significance of the timing, too curious to let inconsistencies slide. Dad, Jasmine said slowly, why would she call you detective? The question he dreaded for 15 years, delivered in the voice he loved more than his own life. Marcus felt the last of his defenses crumble as he looked into his daughter's eyes and saw his own moral compromises reflected back at him. She was going to Northwestern to study criminal justice because she believed in heroes, because she thought her father was one of them. Helen's phone continued recording, the viewer count climbing steadily. Somewhere in Chicago, Marcus knew, old files were being pulled from storage. Phone calls were being made to internal affairs. The protective wall of time and distance he'd built around his new life was cracking like ice in spring. Jasmine, Marcus said carefully, I think you should go inside. No. His daughter crossed her arms, every inch her mother's child in that moment. If this concerns our family, I want to hear it. Helen smiled. Smart girl. She gets that from her father, I bet. Everything was definitely not okay. And it was about to get much worse. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but the words died in his throat as his phone rang with the opening bars of Sweet Home Chicago, a ringtone he hadn't heard in over a decade. The number on the screen made his blood freeze. Chicago Police Department, Internal Affairs Division. You're not going to answer that? Helen asked sweetly, though her knuckles were white where she gripped her phone. The ringing stopped, then immediately started again. Same number. Marcus stared at the screen like it was a loaded gun pointed at his chest. 15 years of silence, and now 2 calls in 30 seconds. Someone in Chicago was very eager to talk. Dad, your phone, Jasmine said, concern creeping into her voice. Marcus declined the call, but before he could pocket the device, it buzzed with a text message. Then another. His hands trembled as he read the first one. Detective Williams, this is Lieutenant Sarah Chen, IAD. We need to speak immediately regarding the Anthony Reeves case. New evidence has come to light. Call me. The second message was from a number he didn't recognize. We know what really happened in that alley, Marcus. Time's up. A friend. Helen must have seen his face change because her smile widened. Funny how technology works, isn't it? Upload a video, tag the right hashtags, and suddenly everyone's paying attention. She held up her phone, showing the climbing view count. 37,000 now. Local news stations are already calling. What alley? Jasmine's voice cut through the mounting panic. Dad, what alley is she talking about? Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her. The same dark eyes as her mother, the same stubborn jaw. In 17 years, he'd never lied directly to her face. Omitted truths, deflected questions, buried the past so deep he almost believed his own cover story. But he'd never looked into those trusting eyes and spoken a deliberate falsehood. That was about to change. Jasmine, I need you to listen carefully, Marcus began, but his phone rang again. Different number this time, one that made his stomach drop even further. The caller ID read Channel 7 News. He declined the call, but 3 more news outlets were already lighting up his screen. Helen's live stream had reached the tipping point where citizen journalism became mainstream media feeding frenzy. By tonight, his face would be on every Chicago news broadcast alongside grainy file photos from his police academy graduation. Detective Williams, Helen said, her voice carrying the formal tone of someone reading prepared remarks. On October 23, 2004, you filed a report stating that Officer Anthony Reeves died in a drive-by shooting during a domestic disturbance call. Gang violence, you said. Random and tragic. Jasmine's eyes widened as the pieces clicked together. October 2004. That's when we moved here. Right after, she turned to her father, right after Mom died. Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. The official story had always been that his wife died in a car accident, that they'd moved to Riverside for a fresh start after the tragedy, but Jasmine's sharp mind was already working backward through the timeline, connecting dates and half-remembered conversations. Actually, Helen continued, let me show you something. She tapped her phone screen, switching from the live stream to her photo gallery. With practiced efficiency, she pulled up a series of images, crime scene photos, autopsy reports, ballistics analyses. Marcus recognized them all. He'd seen identical copies in nightmares for 15 years. Helen, don't, Marcus warned, stepping forward. These are public records, Helen said, holding the phone where Jasmine could see. Obtained through FOIA requests. Took me 3 years and 2 lawyers, but I got them. She scrolled to a photograph of the alley behind Morrison's liquor store. Your father was the only witness to my husband's murder, the only one who could tell the truth about what really happened. Jasmine stared at the images, her face pale. Dad, why do you have these pictures on your phone? Marcus realized with growing horror that Jasmine was looking at Helen's phone, but asking him why he possessed the photos, because of course he would have them. Any cop involved in a partner's death would keep copies of the file, study them obsessively, search for clues or answers or absolution. I don't, Marcus started. But you do. Helen's voice was triumphant. Because good cops never forget their fallen partners. Except you're not a good cop, are you, Marcus? Good cops don't run away. Good cops don't change their names and disappear into suburbia. The phone in Marcus's hand buzzed with another message. This time, it was a photo. A picture of him taken tonight, loading equipment into his car, but with a timestamp from 15 years ago. Beneath it, a single line of text. The Morrison's liquor store security camera wasn't destroyed in 2004. We have the footage. A friend. Marcus dropped the phone. The phone hit the sidewalk with a sharp crack, the screen spiderwebbing across the photo of the alley. Marcus stared at the broken device as if it were a severed limb, his mind racing through impossible calculations. Security footage from 15 years ago couldn't exist. He'd watched the fire department hose down the smoldering remains of Morrison's liquor store himself, seen the melted cameras and destroyed hard drives in the evidence locker. Dad? Jasmine's voice seemed to come from very far away. Dad, you're scaring me. Marcus forced himself to look up from the broken phone. His daughter's face had gone ashen, her analytical mind clearly working through the implications of his reaction. Helen stood frozen, her own phone still recording, but forgotten in her hand, as she processed what they'd all just witnessed. Who has footage? Helen demanded, her carefully constructed confrontation suddenly derailing. The cameras were destroyed. I checked. I've been checking for 15 years. Marcus bent to retrieve his phone, buying himself precious seconds to think. The screen was cracked but functional, the message still visible beneath the fractured glass. Someone calling themselves a friend had impossibly damning evidence and the technological sophistication to doctor timestamps. But why surface now? Why today? We're going inside, Marcus said firmly, grasping Jasmine's elbow. This conversation is over. No. Jasmine pulled away from his touch, the first time in her 17 years she'd physically resisted him. Don't treat me like a child, Dad. If this is about our family, I have a right to know. Helen's phone buzzed with notifications as her live stream comments exploded. Marcus could see the viewer count climbing past 50,000, hashtags proliferating across social media platforms like wildfire. Hashtag Justice for Tony was trending, but now hashtag Morrison's footage and Cover Up Chicago were gaining momentum alongside it. You have a right to be protected, Marcus said quietly. From this. From all of this. Protected from what? The truth? Jasmine's voice carried her mother's fierce independence, the quality that had first attracted Marcus 20 years ago, and now terrified him. You were a police officer. She's saying someone died and you were there. Not just someone, Helen interjected, finding her voice again. My husband, my daughter's father. She turned to Jasmine with newfound desperation. You understand what that means, don't you? Having your father ripped away when you're too young to remember him? Marcus watched his daughter's face change as the parallel hit home. Jasmine had lost her mother at 2 years old, carried that absence through every milestone and achievement since. The idea of losing a parent to violence, of having questions without answers, would resonate in ways Helen couldn't possibly understand. What really happened that night? Jasmine asked, looking directly at her father. The question hung between them like a loaded weapon. Marcus could feel 15 years of careful construction teetering on the edge of collapse. Every bedtime story about his security installation business, every explanation for his occasional nightmares, every deflection when she'd asked about his past, all balanced on the knife's edge of this moment. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, another message. Channel 2 wants an interview. They're offering money for exclusive access. A friend. Then another. The Tribune is running the story tomorrow regardless. Better to get ahead of it. A friend. Whoever a friend was, they were orchestrating this exposure with surgical precision. The timing, the evidence, the media coordination. None of it felt random or opportunistic. Someone wanted Marcus Williams dragged back into the light, and they'd been planning this moment for a very long time. 57,000 views, Helen said, checking her phone with shaking hands. Oh my God, this is really happening. Marcus made a decision born of 17 years of paternal instinct, overriding everything else. Jasmine, go pack a bag. We're leaving town tonight. What? His daughter stared at him in shock. Dad, I have school tomorrow. I have a college interview on Friday. Pack a bag, Marcus repeated, his voice carrying the authority of his former profession. Now. Running again? Helen called out as Jasmine reluctantly headed toward the house. Just like 15 years ago? How long before you abandoned this life too? Marcus waited until his daughter disappeared through the front door, before turning back to Helen. When he spoke, his voice carried the cold precision of someone who'd interrogated killers and survived corrupt precincts. You have no idea what you're playing with, he said quietly. What happened to Tony wasn't random gang violence, but it also wasn't what you think it was. And whoever is pulling your strings right now, whoever gave you my location and fed you that footage, they don't want justice. They want chaos. Helen's confident expression flickered with the first hint of doubt. What are you talking about? Marcus's phone buzzed one final time. The message was just 3 words. Welcome home, Marcus. He looked up at Helen's camera, knowing that 50,000 people were watching, knowing that his carefully constructed life was already over. Turn off the recording, he said, because what I'm about to tell you will get us both killed. Helen's finger hovered over the stop recording button, her live stream count climbing past 60,000. The comment feed was a blur of conspiracy theories and demands for answers, but she couldn't focus on the words. Marcus's warning echoed in her mind. What I'm about to tell you will get us both killed. You're lying, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. This is just another manipulation, another cover-up. Marcus glanced toward his house, where warm light spilled from Jasmine's bedroom window. His daughter's silhouette moved back and forth as she packed, her world dissolving while she folded clothes and tried to make sense of a father who'd become a stranger in the span of 20 minutes. Tony was dirty, Marcus said quietly, and so was I. Helen's phone trembled in her grip. After 15 years of searching for answers, the word she dreaded most hung between them like a death sentence. No. Tony was investigating corruption in the department. He was skimming from drug seizures. Marcus cut her off. 20% of every bust. Had been for 3 years before I found out. The admission tasted like ash in his mouth. I caught him in the evidence locker at 2 a.m, repackaging cocaine into smaller bags, setting aside the difference for himself. Helen shook her head violently. That's not true. Tony would never. Your husband owed $40,000 to a bookie named Vincent Torino. Did you know that? Did you know about the gambling addiction he'd been hiding from you? Marcus's voice carried the weight of 15 years of suppressed guilt. I didn't think so. The live stream comments exploded with activity as viewers caught fragments of the conversation, but Helen barely noticed. Marcus was describing a man she didn't recognize, details about her husband's secret life that couldn't possibly be true. I should have turned him in the moment I found out, Marcus continued. Should have filed a report, let internal affairs handle it. But Tony had 2 years until pension. You had a baby daughter. I thought I could fix it quietly, make him stop, help him work through the gambling problem. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another message from a friend. Tell her about Torino's visit. Tell her why Tony really died. Helen saw his face go white as he read the text. Who is that? Who keeps messaging you? I don't know, Marcus admitted. But they know things that were never in any official report. Things only 3 people knew, and 2 of them are dead. Inside the house, a door slammed. Jasmine's voice carried through the open windows, frustrated and confused. "Dad, my laptop won't fit in the duffel bag. How long are we going to be gone?" The sound of his daughter's voice seemed to break something inside Marcus. Helen watched 17 years of careful composure crumble as the weight of his buried choices finally overwhelmed him. "The night Tony died," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, "Vincent Torino came looking for his money. Found us in that alley behind Morrison's, wanted to make an example. Tony pulled his weapon first, but he was shaking so badly he could barely hold it steady." Helen's camera captured every word, broadcasting his confession to an audience that had swollen past 70,000 viewers. True crime podcasters were already taking screenshots, journalists frantically fact-checking names and dates. "3 shots, Marcus continued, his eyes fixed on some distant point in the darkness. "That's what I reported. Drive-by shooting, gang violence, random tragedy." "But there were 4 shots that night, Helen. 4. The live stream comment feed had gone silent, thousands of viewers holding their collective breath. "The first 3 came from Torino's gun. Hit Tony in the chest, dropped him immediately." Marcus finally looked directly into Helen's camera. "The 4th shot came from my weapon, into Torino's head. Point-blank range." Helen's knees buckled. She caught herself against her car, the phone still recording but forgotten in her trembling hand. "I killed a man in cold blood," Marcus said. "Not self-defense, not protection of a fellow officer, revenge. Pure and simple revenge for what he'd done to my partner." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Then I moved the body 6 blocks away, planted the murder weapon in a known gang house, and filed a report that made Tony look like a hero who died in the line of duty instead of a corrupt cop who got himself killed." Marcus's phone buzzed one final time. "Now tell her who Vincent Torino was working for. Tell her why this all matters now." The blood drained from Marcus's face as he read the message. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Police cars responding to dozens of 911 calls from viewers who just watched a murder confession live-streamed to the internet. Helen found her voice at last. "Who?" she whispered. "Who was Torino working for?" Marcus looked up at his daughter's bedroom window one final time, memorizing the sight of her shadow against the curtains. "Chicago's Deputy Superintendent of Police," he said. "Daniel Morrison, the man who's been running for mayor for the past 6 months." The sirens grew louder, and Helen's phone finally died, the screen going black as 73,000 viewers lost their connection to the most explosive confession in Chicago's history. The silence after Helen's phone died felt deafening. 73,000 witnesses had vanished in an instant, leaving only the growing wail of sirens and the terrible weight of what Marcus had just revealed. Helen stared at her black screen, then slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. "Morrison," she whispered. "Daniel Morrison, the mayoral candidate." Marcus nodded, watching police lights paint the distant trees in red and blue. Vincent Torino wasn't just some street-level bookie. He was Morrison's bagman, collecting debts for the whole operation. Protection money, gambling cuts, drug percentages, all of it flowed through Torino to Morrison's crew. Helen's mind reeled. For 15 years, she'd imagined her husband's killer as some faceless gang member, a random predator who'd stolen Tony's life for pocket change. The truth was so much worse and so much bigger. "When I killed Torino," Marcus continued, his voice hollow, "I didn't just avenge Tony's death. I eliminated the one witness who could connect Morrison to the whole network. Every dirty cop, every fixed case, every planted evidence bag. Torino kept records of it all." The sirens were getting closer now, maybe 5 minutes out. Marcus pulled out his car keys with steady hands, as if he'd been preparing for this moment his entire adult life. "That's why someone's been watching me," he said. "Morrison's been climbing the ranks for 15 years, building his political career on the foundation of that covered-up murder. If the truth comes out now, his mayoral campaign dies," Helen finished. "Along with everyone who knows the real story." Marcus's phone buzzed one last time. The message was brief: "Cars in the alley. Engine running. You have 2 minutes." Helen saw him read it, saw the resignation in his eyes. "You're leaving again." "I have to protect Jasmine." Marcus looked toward the house where his daughter was still packing, blissfully unaware that her entire world had just imploded on live television. Whatever game Morrison's people are playing, she can't be part of it. "Morrison's people?" Helen's voice cracked. "You think Morrison sent those messages?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Morrison would want me dead, not exposed. Someone else is orchestrating this. Someone who wants the truth to come out but needed a catalyst. He gestured toward Helen's dead phone. Congratulations, you just provided it. The police sirens were close enough now that Helen could distinguish individual vehicles. At least 3 cars, maybe 4. In minutes, this quiet suburban street would become a crime scene. Marcus would be in handcuffs, and whatever protection his anonymity had provided would be gone forever. I was wrong about you, Helen said suddenly. Earlier, when I called you a coward for running, you weren't protecting yourself, you were protecting her. Marcus paused at his car door. I was protecting myself too. Don't make me into something I'm not, Helen. I killed a man and covered it up. Everything that's happened since, Tony's death becoming a lie, Morrison's career, your 15 years of searching for answers, all of it stems from my choices that night. Through the living room window, they could see Jasmine descending the stairs with her packed bag, her face a mixture of confusion and fear. She'd grown up believing her father was a simple security consultant, a man who'd left police work behind for a quieter life. The girl walking toward that door would emerge into a world where her father was either a confessed murderer or a whistleblower marked for death, possibly both. Helen, Marcus said urgently, when the police get here, tell them everything I told you, but also tell them this. Vincent Torino kept records, financial ledgers, payment schedules, names and dates. I never found them, but Morrison's been looking for 15 years. That's why the surveillance. Why the pressure now? Helen nodded, understanding flooding through her. Someone else found them first. Torino's records. That's who's been sending you messages. Has to be. And whoever it is, they've been planning this exposure for a long time. Your live stream wasn't random, Helen. Someone guided you to this moment, gave you just enough information to ask the right questions at the right time. The front door opened and Jasmine emerged, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. When she saw the police lights reflecting off nearby houses, her pace quickened into a run. Dad, what's happening? Are those police cars coming here? Marcus caught his daughter's shoulders, looking into her eyes with desperate intensity. Jasmine, I need you to listen very carefully. In about 60 seconds, I'm going to be arrested. There are things about my past, about why we moved here, that you're going to learn tonight. Remember that everything I've done, every choice I've made for 17 years, has been about keeping you safe. Helen watched the exchange with growing horror, finally understanding the true cost of her quest for truth. She'd wanted justice for Tony, answers about his death, accountability for whoever had covered it up. Instead, she'd destroyed an innocent girl's faith in the only parent she had left. The first police car rounded the corner, followed immediately by 2 others. Time's up, Marcus said quietly.